they really tease you, right? They're like, could it be? Could it be? It is? Oh, it isn't. Oh, it is! Like...
Hello and welcome to Rhythm Encounter episode 51. If you've been listening to the show for a while, our last episode was technically 33, but we renumbered them, so don't worry, you're not missing anything. 51 is basically the start of a new season for us. We've been on hiatus since about 2017. It's taken us a while to get everything together again and ready to go, and part of that was because of our new site, transitioning over to a new system there. We wanted to have that mostly out of the way, which hopefully by the time this posts is all behind us. So now that we have that going, we're established there, we're bringing back this podcast that a lot of us at the site have really missed for several years, and I know several of you have too. So we figured, one, we got to bring the show back, and if we're going to bring it back, we should do it with a topic that a lot of us really, really care about. So our topic today is a composer focus. So today we're all about Yasunori Mitsuda. Now, a lot of us know him from a few key things. Of course, he does the music for the Chrono games and a couple of the Xeno games and several others. But he has a long, long history of music. So we're going to go with some really interesting places today. And it's not just me. I guess I should introduce my other hosts here. So, along with me here, I have Hilary Andreff.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here on Rhythm.
And we have one of our music editors, Chris Porter.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here and for bringing the really interesting songs you brought.
Yeah, no worries.
So, if you haven't heard Rhythm listened in a while, if you're not sitting around just listening to our first, 49 episodes over and over, most of our shows use a similar format where we have a topic and everyone on the show brings a few different songs and we'll listen to them in different blocks and then talk about them and our thoughts. So in this one we're actually going to have 3 blocks of 2 songs each. So starting off block 1, Hilary has our first pick of the day.
I do. And I really, at least with my picks today, wanted to show the range of compositions that Mr. Mitsuda has done. So the first one I picked is slightly creepy, very atmospheric, and that is Coffin Fetish / Blue Castle from the Shadow Hearts original soundtrack.
Great. Okay, and then after that, we have one of Chris's selections. So what do you have for us?
Okay, so this is a track, actually, similarly to Hilary, I wanted to kind of pick some tracks that maybe didn't quite sound like Mitsuda, like something like, you hear it, like, that's gotta be Mitsuda. This one, I don't think you would think that. So this one's actually called Beautiful Day, and it's from the Armodyne original soundtrack.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to go listen to those, and we'll be back in a minute with some commentary.
So, I want to give a little bit of context for my Shadow Hearts pick. It's kind of a character / place piece. It plays in a castle when you meet one of your later party members in the first Shadow Hearts game, and he is a vampire, which the title kind of gives away a little bit. But he's not a terrible vampire. He's helping the people in the town around him. So that's where Shadow Hearts kind of sets off its trope of interesting, kind of funny, off-kilter vampires. And that's part of the reason I picked it, because I had a really hard time picking a single track from Shadow Hearts. Mitsuda's contributions were all across the board. In the Shadow Hearts series, he did battle themes, he did a bunch of different stuff, and so I decided to go with something that was a little sparse and, like I said before, creepy. It almost had a Souls music kind of vibe to me as well, just with the background slightly flowy, faster pace, and the sparseness with the rest of the instrumentation. And I also just really liked how they use the bell toning to kind of punctuate the different movements of the song. So I think that covers my initial thoughts. What did you all think?
I just like the title. No. It's such a weird, strange title. I do really like it. Like, there's more to it than just that, but the one of you help me out here. What's the instrument here? Is this a guitar? Is this something else, that some other strange instrument I've never heard of?
Well, it sounds like there's
like the strings.
The harp is like the main thing that you hear, and then you also hear a piano come in, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And they're doing like the flowy parts in the background.
Yeah. I think one of the words in my notes was pluckiness. I like the pluckiness.
Yeah, I like.
Doesn't really describe the overall song very well, but it does have a nice, like, mellow vibe to it.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about it, is there is that sort of plucky through line, but then you have that against a really sparse, kind of creepy musical backdrop with some industrial sounds, which is the other thing I wanted to mention. It's got a slight industrial twinge to it as well,
which is so like at home on the Shadow Hearts soundtrack, because like Yoshitaka Hirota just is like an industrial god. I mean,
he really is. So it's kind of cool to see Mitsuda playing to some other composers' strengths, and I think I had notes to that effect with one of these other pieces here too.
Yeah, like and also another key instrument in this track is the fretless bass, which Mitsuda is just it's such a key part of his sound. And the way he uses it here reminds me of like Chrono Cross, like Isle of the Damned, like it just has that vibe for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get that little like funky part in the middle.
Yeah, it's so good. So it's interesting, Hilary, because you were saying like you were giving context to the piece, and I'm like, man, I'd never played Shadow Hearts. It was one of those games I never owned a PS2 like back in the day, so I just missed it. It didn't stop me from buying the soundtrack, because that's 95% of the VGM I listen to is from games I've never played. Who has time, right? But but it was nice to hear the context of it, because I never knew it.
Yeah.
I don't really have any context for our next song, because half of my notes for this, okay, not half, but was that I've never even heard of this game. I don't know. It kind of passed me by, I guess. I know it didn't come out here, but
yeah, I don't think it was ever recorded anywhere. I think it was just a Japan only release, possibly somewhere else in Asia, but I really don't know. Yeah, like I said before, like I've never played this. It's one of those. For me, because Mitsuda's my favorite composer, if it's a Mitsuda soundtrack, I buy it. It doesn't matter like where it came from, what game it's from. It could even be from a series I absolutely loathe, which that doesn't exist. There's no like series that Mitsuda composed for that I loathe. But if that ever happened, I'd still buy the soundtrack, right? It's
right,
yeah.
right.
So yeah, I don't know much about Armodyne. I think it's like a strategy, kind of like military strategy type game.
Yeah, it looked SRPG.
Yeah. But yeah, so are we going to talk about Beautiful Day then?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so this track, I remember specifically, like the first time I heard it, I'm just like, what is this? And I quickly like checked the booklet. I'm like, is this Mitsuda? Like, I know this is like his soundtrack, but surely he had a guest composer for this one. No, I mean, it's Mitsuda. And like, I don't know, there's something so unique about it and so like out of character for him. But then like the more I listen to it, I'm like, no, I mean, obviously he's capable of writing something so unique to his style. And then, so Hilary, you said that you researched something about this track. What did you find out?
I did. So one of the things I found out about Beautiful Day is he's credited as playing the guitar, which is really neat.
Yeah, because he often hires musicians to play for him. But yeah, like I think he's a pretty good guitar player, bouzouki player. And when he plays live, he often does like simple keyboard stuff and simple like auxiliary percussion. So yeah, he performs sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I already had a really high opinion of him anyway, but I wasn't sure how much of the, how much he often plays, let alone like here on this soundtrack for this game I've never heard of.
Right.
Which is really great. Like I didn't actually listen to anything else on this soundtrack yet, but I definitely want to check it out now.
Oh yeah, highly recommend.
This one's really, really pretty.
Yeah. And like I said, everything else on the soundtrack sounds nothing like this song. Like this is a very, very like it's an outlier, but it's like it's so good to me. But yeah, the whole soundtrack is very cool.
Yeah, one thing it shares in common with the Chrono Cross soundtrack, I think, is it's something I would play on vacation. It's just got a very relaxing vibe, and I love the beat and the percussion to it.
Yeah,
I like the repeated notes when the melody starts on the guitar. Yeah. There's just a little bit of like a delay that do.
Yep.
Which is fun.
It catches you off guard, right? Because you're trying to follow along, and you're like, I think I know when that weird starts, but like you actually don't. Like it kind of It's
but it keeps you engaged. Oh, yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah, very, very cool track. Very well composed, and I don't know. I think he took some chances with it, and it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. What's the rest of the soundtrack like then?
It's a mix. You'll hear kind of gun hazardy stuff. You'll hear some. There's a wide range of music. There's some kind of more militaristic like battle themes. There's some really, really beautiful like string work and hard to describe. It's a lot of music. There's 2 discs of tracks. So yeah. So to the listeners, I mean, like when you introduce the show, Mitsuda is known for Xenogears and Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger mainly, but he's got so much stuff out there that a lot of people. Like this game Armodyne, because it was never ported overseas. I'm sure a lot of people have never heard of the game, and so unless they're like a diehard Mitsuda fan or a diehard BGM fan, they probably never even thought to look up, what else has Mitsuda done? But I highly recommend doing it. You'll find a lot of hidden gems, like in his discography.
Yeah,
treasure hunt.
We one thing we're doing actually now, we always link to reviews and VGMDB listings before on Rhythm Encounter, but one thing I'm going to start doing now in our show notes is also listing places you can buy or stream music when possible. And of course, there's nothing for this.
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming it's been out of print for ages, so I tried. If you look at our show notes, you'll find a listing on VGMDB. So somehow or another, I want to listen to more of it, but it doesn't look like there's any way to actually buy it at the moment.
I can. I'll look up after the show and see if there's still stock, because it was actually put out by Sleigh Bells, which is Mitsuda's own record label.
There you go.
Yeah, so he might have stock still. I mean, it's an old album, it's been out for a long, long time. But he might actually still have copies of the CD that you could import.
Well, cool. Well, then maybe I'll have to take all of this out of the show. We'll see. All right. Well, so that was our gradual introduction to this episode, and now we have 2 decidedly more upbeat or epic songs in the middle here. So the next block is going to start with, one of my choices. So if anyone didn't follow the lengthy development cycle and everything that went on with Final Fantasy 15 and all of its DLC and merchandise and books and anime and whatever else I'm forgetting, jewelry. Anyway, so all the DLC episodes of Final Fantasy 15, each one had a guest composer, and episode IGNIS, I was very excited, was Mitsuda. And some other people too, but he's the main guest composer. So I have the main theme of Final Fantasy 15 episode IGNIS coming up next, and then after that is Chris's other pick.
Yep, so for my other pick, it's from a mobile game. I think iOS and Android. The Japanese title was Revolvers 8 spelled kind of weirdly with like RE:(Volvers 8, and then the Western retitling of it was just Revolve 8. But anyway, so as usual, never played this game. I've seen some gameplay videos of it, but it doesn't really look like my thing. But again, so Procyon Studios did the soundtrack for this one, and this is called To the Top, A New Beginning. And this one of Mitsuda's.
Great. Yeah, so we have a super high budget game that everyone's heard of, and then one that a lot of people might not have heard of. It's a good mix. So let's give a listen, and then we'll talk about them after. Episode IGNIS. I wish I could talk about the DLC itself. I have not actually played it yet. But overall, the Volume 2 of Final Fantasy 15 is just, there's a lot of really great, surprising stuff on there. So it really is all worth listening to, but we're not talking about those other composers today. We are talking about arguably the best character in the game with one of my favorite composers. What I think is interesting about this, and I think it's more or less true about a lot of the Volume 2 soundtrack, is you definitely get a sense of each of the composers. Like, there is some stuff here that feels Mitsuda, whatever that means. I don't know how to describe that besides maybe it's the strings. There's certain parts of it that remind me of things like maybe parts of Chrono Cross and some other notable songs. But I feel like this, and especially some other ones on the soundtrack, like they still somehow fit with the rest of 15.
Yeah.
Like, this is Mitsuda and the other composers that are here, and it's their own thing, but somehow it's still cohesive with Shimomura and everyone else who contributed. And I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know how any of these people can do this and bring their own touch to it, but it still fits and doesn't feel out of place. Yeah. It's just incredible.
I think that's a testament to how well researched Mitsuda is in terms of like the world of 15 and IGNIS in particular. I can't remember exactly where I heard this or read it, but it was some interview with him, and he said something like, I think I spent more time like getting to know IGNIS as a character than I did actually composing music. So like he spent like all this time like trying to understand the world and the character, and then finally dove into the music. And I think that's why it feels so organic. It's like, of course this is what IGNIS theme sounds like. You know what I mean? It just seems so like obvious because it's so well made.
Wow. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say I'm not really surprised, but I didn't know that. I didn't know he got like that into the character in the game. That probably explains a lot.
It's really neat. One of the things I was going to say about it is I was going to comment on Mitsuda's skill at composing something that fits so well into the world of Final Fantasy.
Right.
And so that goes right along with that mode of thought. Just there's so many like specific touches in the song and just the general sound as well that remind me of a Final Fantasy game. I have notes about there's a moment where the brass takes over the melody and the strings start doing just kind of sharp staccato in the background that reminded me of 8.
Yes.
And some low runs and just kind of the clashing percussion too. And he really got those touches, but you can still feel his fingerprint on it too.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's
neat.
Yeah, actually, I never even thought about that until you mentioned it a little earlier today, that you had a little bit of Final Fantasy VIII vibes there, which yes, those are there, which I didn't really hone in on it. I guess maybe subconsciously I heard it, but I didn't think about it until you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, even though Uematsu wasn't responsible for 15's music, Final Fantasy, it's still his legacy, it's still his musical legacy, and you almost like have to respect it. As a composer coming into the series, so I think that when you do hear stuff like that, I think it's very intentional and almost like unavoidable for the composers. They're just like, okay, you have this this huge body of Uematsu's work, and the legacy of Final Fantasy's music, and even with new composers, I think you still hear hints of them kind of honoring him.
Yeah.
And
I think that's pretty masterfully done.
I think so.
And the main melody itself is it's exquisite, isn't it? I mean, the IGNIS' main theme, like that melody you hear is just like, it's just got such a life of its own. And
it does. And then that carries through the rest of that part of the soundtrack too.
Right.
Like you'll hear it in other
he brings it back.
songs too. Yep.
And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the violin performance right there too. Really good violin performance.
So emotional. It's one of those things where it's like, I think that you could probably pull it off somewhat with a virtual violinist, but I'm so glad they went all out and then hired whoever they did, because the performance is just heart-wrenching.
Oh yeah, definitely fits the character. I mean, I don't know what he goes through in that DLC, but I know what he goes through in the main game, so it definitely fits the character. Switching over to another game, I have just a few notes here. I'll let you guys.
Sure.
You'll probably have more to say about it than me, but I'll say this: from the album art, because of course I hadn't heard of this game. I'm not sure what I expected this song to be, but I don't think it was this. And I looked up the game a little bit too, and I guess it came out here. It was actually brought out in English, and it's already gone. Like it was released here, and then they shut it down sometime last year.
Right.
So I'm not sure it was my kind of game either.
Yeah.
And even the music I heard kind of feels like, okay, that's what I expect from a whatever it is, some sort of battle royale
strategy game, I think.
Strategy, defense. I'm not sure exactly, but like, and the music is like, all right, it's it's fine. Like it fits that, and I'm not sure how this song fits in exactly.
Right.
I don't really care because it's so good. So we can't go play the game anymore, but at least we have this, and I think he did a few songs on the soundtrack.
Mitsuda did 3. Yeah. This. Okay. So a little bit of details that I know about this soundtrack was Procyon Studios is Mitsuda's studio. They handle quite a few soundtracks, many of which Mitsuda has no compositional part in. But sometimes he will. He'll just like contribute a couple tracks to one of them. Most of this soundtrack was Shinsuke Tsuchiya, and then also the other in-house composer, Mariam Abu Nasser. I've never known how to pronounce her last name. But those are like the 2 key like in-house composers at his studio. But yeah, Shinsuke Tsuchiya did most of this music. Mariam Abu Nasser did a couple tracks, and then Mitsuda did 3. And like you said, Mike, this track doesn't really sound like most of the other soundtrack. The rest of the soundtrack is, I actually really love it. I think the soundtrack is quite remarkable. But yeah, this is an outlier again, just like my Beautiful Day pick. It stands out for a different reason though. Beautiful Day stood out because it was so like not Mitsuda, and so just like the arrangement's just so strange and but like in a very cool way. This one stands out because it's so beautiful and just like grand and in stark contrast to the rest of the soundtrack, which is kind of like hip, I guess, like you'd say. But again, similar to the IGNIS theme, the main melody you hear in this is just, it's so good and like it just speaks to you and it's so characterful.
Yeah, grand is definitely the right word. And actually hearing these 2 right next to each other, I'm kind of struck. They have a lot of similarities, and it's really cool.
Yes.
Wow, who put together the order of tracks in this?
I know.
Yeah, like
we got our 2 like grand violin-y, clashy pieces together.
I'll take credit for putting them together, but it is really lucky that they happened to be here.
Right.
Because Chris brought this one in.
Talk about like what we were picking. We all just did this independently, and then afterwards we're like, whoa, these actually fit together.
Yeah.
These all
but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say the rest of the soundtrack is kind of hip, because that is not what I would have pictured either.
No.
You'll have to give it a listen. If you now this one is actually available, like it's on iTunes, like even in the US, I think. I think we saw it on Spotify too. Yeah. I think they like actually released this one. I mean, which is awesome. It's a Sega game. I mean, if that helps. I don't know if Sega's been releasing their stuff more recently, because I know a lot of companies like Konami and Falcom, they've been kind of putting their stuff up on Spotify, and I don't know if Sega's been doing that, but
Sega's been pretty good about it. Well, okay. I don't know how far it goes, but I know a lot of their bigger games. Like there's a lot of Dreamcast games. I know Crazy Taxi. I feel like Jet Set Radio.
Okay.
Skies of Arcadia is definitely on iTunes, and
nice.
I think everywhere else too. So they have some stuff out there.
Okay.
They've definitely expanded their repertoire.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention are those vocals at the beginning.
Yes.
That also, they're awesome. But they also remind me a lot of Shadow Hearts.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like between IGNIS and this theme from Revolve 8, they both make use of kind of like a vocally intro, but like totally different styles, right? One's like this kind of like a solo female vocalist that's very world, I guess. I don't know what it does. I don't know what region that style of vocal comes from, but and then compared to the IGNIS theme, which is just this like grand choir
Which is really funny because I'm looking at the cover for Revolve right now,
Yeah.
and it's two somewhat regal-looking ladies,
Right.
like kind of growling at each other, and I'm like, "Yep, those vocals fit that."
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, yeah, that cover is pretty cool. Oh, you know what? Look,
Yeah.
actually, the soundtrack was released by Sleigh Bells. That was Mitsuda's label, so it was a Sega game, but Mitsuda looks like he held on to the rights to the music and did it himself.
Oh, great.
Good on him, man. I wish that he would release his entire back catalog. You know, everything that he has the rights to, I think that should be out there.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully someday.
I'd be all for
I
that.
mean, I already own all of it, of course, on CD. You guys know me, but for everybody else.
Well, yes. All right. So we're 2/3 through now. So we have 2 more songs today, not counting, maybe there's a bonus track at the end of this.
What could it be?
I don't know. So the first song of our last block is something Hilary brought, which I know you were really excited to bring on here.
I am, because one thing that you got to talk about if you're talking about Mitsuda is his love of Celtic music.
Yes.
So my second pick was a collaboration he did with a national Irish choral group, Anuna, very famous in their own right, for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And that song is called Shadow of the Lowlands, and it's just lovely mixed male-female vocal choral piece.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear that, as if I haven't already listened to it 3 times today.
You can be excited to hear it even if you've already heard it. I am.
Yes,
very
that's
excited to
true.
hear it again.
I'm excited for everyone else to hear it if they
Yeah.
haven't heard it yet. All right, and then the last track, and I'll save most of my commentary for after, but I think we all exercise a lot of restraint and also wanting to bring in something unique here that we didn't bring Chrono stuff on because one, it's been on the show a lot, and it's great, but it's good getting some more variety here. But at the same time, I feel like if we're not going to have Chrono, we at least have to have a Xenogears song on here.
Yeah.
And we featured, I think, we actually have a list of every song that's been on Rhythm Encounter. And I think we've had 4 or 5 Xenogears, but never anything from Creid, which is very strange to me. So I brought Creid from the Xenogears Creid Arrange album from way back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a nice throwback.
Yeah. So we're ending on 2 Xeno songs, actually.
From 98.
Which I'm just now realizing I paired up. Okay. Anyway, so let's go listen to the Xeno stuff and then talk about it in a bit.
Shadows of the lowland leading to the cold and darkened days, without any hope, without a light for long. Will this suffering ever come to an end? Will this suffering ever come to an end? One day. Pride keeps us strong today. Glory will be with us. Now the time has come to fight and seize the day.
So, yes, Shadow of the Lowlands. Very mellow, very, very beautiful. I picked it because I think it shows Mitsuda having a deep knowledge of a range of different types of Celtic music. This is mostly vocals, and it's just, there's a beautiful kind of pulse running through it with the female voices at first. They kind of create a pulse, and you have some great complex vocal harmonies that blend really well throughout the whole thing. So I think he plays to Anuna's strengths in it, honestly, throughout the composition. Yeah, I mean, they're very famous. This almost sounds like something they could have done on their own.
Yeah, he wrote it for them. I mean, this was
very clearly.
It was a dream of Mitsuda's for decades to work with them, because he's admired them for so long, and this was like a dream come true for him. And I mean, he hit such a home run with all the tracks from this game that he arranged for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up too. This is not the only one of these that I could have picked. Yeah. There are a few others on the album too. So if you like this one, there's more there in the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack. And it's interesting also to contrast this one with Creid, because it's a slightly different Celtic style where you've got the complex pipe playing with some vocals.
Yeah. I'd remarked off air that I think it's interesting that, and you can feel free to semi-correct me like you did there too, where I was saying like this is very, it's not the kind of vocals that you're used to hearing in a lot of games. Like when you think of like a male vocal or choir or anything like that in a video game, it's really easy to think of something like Final Fantasy VII, or that's a lot of the kind of male vocals you get.
Right.
Like this style is very, I think, rare in video games, but not for them.
Right. Yeah.
As a group.
The choral. Yeah. Usually when I think of vocal music in video games, either ominous male choir or like female vocal track that can be kind of pretty or poppy or something like that.
Yeah. It's very, very different from what a lot of what's out there. And it's, I think, one of its definite strengths.
Yeah, where you have Michael McGlynn is like the leader of Anuna, and his voice gets like front and center in this arrangement a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned the complex harmonies and how they just like lift his voice up.
Yeah. It gives the song just a truly really nice build. And I know when we were talking and listening together, we were sort of like, wait, we just have to listen, because there's so many points where they lift that voice, and it just creates moments where you have to pause and listen. It builds so well.
Yeah, it's we were. I'll mention this. Just, you can cut it out if you want to. I'll mention. It would be very nice to have to be able to listen to this in real time and react in real time, because there's certain moments in this track, the Anuna track, where it's just like the harmonies are just unreal. You're just like, oh, I cannot believe that just happened. Like, how did you write that? How did you think to do that? And there's several moments in that just give me chills. This is absolutely gorgeous piece.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. Okay. I guess I could talk about my song. One thing I noticed, these don't have a lot to do with the song itself, but when I was looking up links for our show notes, I was looking up the VGMDB listing for this, and this is apparently the 5th album ever added to VGMDB. Which tells you how long they've been around too. Yeah. And then for me, I was just curious because I've had this album is from, I lost already. 1998. And I'm thinking back on like how long I've been actually like listening to music, on my computer, and I realized I had this for a while. So I looked up my iTunes, and apparently I've never re-ripped the song since then. So I've had this in my iTunes since 2007.
Nice.
It was encoded with iTunes version 4.
Wow.
I don't even know what version we're at now, but boy, I've had this song for a long time.
At least like 11 or 12, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I have been listening to this album on and off for many, many years.
Yeah, same.
And I've never tired of it.
This is a CD I had in my car in the early 2000s, pretty much all the time.
Yep.
Really good for traveling.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I have the same CD still. I've never gotten rid of it.
Exactly.
And it's been with me for many years.
Oh.
Yeah.
another interesting thing between the two that I just thought of is I think it's pretty cool that Shadow of the Lowlands is actually in English, and then Creid
Is in
Mitsuda
Gaelic.
actually wrote some lyrics in Japanese originally, and it got translated to Gaelic, if I'm
Right,
understanding correctly.
Wow. I did not know that until today.
And they're very, from what I could gather, they were very Xeno appropriate lyrics. Let's see, about two separate pieces, two separate people calling out to each other and searching for each other.
That's very that harkens back to Xenogears, right? I don't
Yep.
want to spoil
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
But even back then, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's been some other albums. There was was it last year? We had like the revival disc of Xenogears, the
Right.
Blu-ray version, which I think made some musical changes, but it's mostly the same, which is fine.
It was basically just
And
a
then-
remastering, but they actually did.
Yeah.
Anuna actually appeared on that though, right? There was some brand new arrangements of Xenogears tracks with Anuna, which was quite a treat.
I think that started the Anuna train.
Okay. Okay. Well, shoot. I haven't actually heard those particular tracks, so maybe this kind of ruins what I was about to say here. But there was that, and then there was several years ago there was the Myth arrangement album.
Yes.
This was great.
Also good. I think the problem was, at least for me, like that was really good. It's kind of like the I'm sorry to say this, like the Chrono Orchestra soundtrack from last year. Great, it's fantastic. But the year prior, there was that vocal album, which is so dear to me. I like the Myth Xenogears album. I think it's great, but I already had Creid in my life.
Right.
And there's room for both. I know there's room for both. They don't actually have to compete with each other, but
I agree. I completely agree with your assessment. I think that both games, I think the smaller ensemble arrangement, in Xenogears' case, Creid, better than Myth. And in Chrono Cross's case, I think that the one that was just released, the live performance from the Chrono Cross tour, the 20th anniversary tour, far better than the orchestral album by many, many leagues. I mean,
I haven't heard that one yet. I really want to. It's on my list.
I got to see it live, man, in Osaka.
Oh, man.
So good. And I bought that the digital release when it finally came out. But,
Wow. Yeah. Wow. The Mitsuda dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I've looked for it, I think, unless it's changed in the last, week or two, but I think it's only available digital. It's only digital and only in Japan.
Is it still
For some
only in
reason.
Japan?
I don't know. I mean, that's the last time I looked, that's what it was.
Okay.
I would
hope that
absolutely
it's not-
buy it if it was...
Yeah, they better
yeah.
release it worldwide. I mean, it's Chrono Cross. It's like everybody
I would hope
pick
so.
that up.
Oh, yeah. I would buy it right now. I'm going to look it up. No. Anyway, yeah. So the whole album is beautiful. I had a really hard time actually choosing which one. I like that the two vocal themes that we usually hear in English from Xenogears, there are Japanese versions on this album, which are great.
Strange not hearing Joanne Hogg's voice though, right? Because you're so used to
Yes.
that. But it is cool having another version of them, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it was between I think I had this and Balto and June Mermaid
Oh man,
and one other one. So yeah, so I had 10, 11 tracks, and I think I narrowed it down to 5.
right.
It was really difficult to just pick one, but I think this was the one to do because of the, oh shoot, what is it? The elbow pipes.
Ah, yes, the elbow pipes.
It's those
Alien
amazing
pipes,
elbow pipes.
When those came in, I got all excited just because they work so well with the vocals in the background in this track in particular, but also because if Creid has a signature instrument, that is probably it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it definitely steals the show when they come in. And I think that the way they're used in this album, there's a lot of people that don't like the sound of Celtic pipes, right? They think it's grating or something. I think that you can convert people to it by having them hear it on this album. I can't think of a single person to be like, oh no, that sounds awful, right? It's so
No.
well used in this album.
It's a pipe integrated really well with a bunch of
Really
other instruments throughout, which is great. And I think it also is an interesting side note that these Uilleann pipes are basically the quieter, more polite version of pipes that are used in Celtic music. And they have the best range and a slightly better timbre that does work well with other instruments.
Yeah.
I love just describing them as more polite bagpipes.
Yes.
So like,
because bagpipes are just so rude, you know?
I'm just imagining like a guy in a kilt standing outside your window and like playing the bagpipes, and you yell at him, but then he switches to the Ilian pipes and he's like, "Oh no, I guess that's okay. It's more polite."
This is great. Yes.
I don't know, like, I guess visually now I can picture someone like barging into your room with bagpipes, but not so much with these ones. You know, they'll like knock first and be like, "Hey, you want me to play some of this?" And be like, "Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You weren't rude about it like that bagpipe."
I wouldn't even imagine he'd say anything. He would just kind of like hit. He'd go, huh, and then start playing.
I mean, bagpipe guy just wants to scare his foes on the battlefield, all right?
True. I guess you got, when you think about it like that, that's how else can you do it if you're not going in like all in for it? Like, hey, I'm here.
Yep. But yeah, really cool pipes with a bunch of other instruments on Creid.
Yeah. But like in this track in particular, though, it's really remarkable how well a female voice and the Ilian pipes like blend. Like, and he's so busy, right? The Ilian pipe player.
Mm-hmm.
So many notes, and it's like it never clashes. And it's like, how is this happening? Like, if I was composing this, I would be clashing all the time because I'm not Mitsuda. But you know, it's like.
But who is?
Remarkable job. Oh, I wanted to say something.
True.
About, Mike, when you were saying June Mermaid, that's the unofficial title of that track, and I still call it June Mermaid. But the reason it's called June Mermaid is from somebody mistranslating it like 20 years ago. It's actually October Mermaid.
Oh shoot!
I've heard that.
And so let me explain how this happened. So,
well, remember I ripped this in 2007. Okay.
Right. So. No, literally, I still call it June Mermaid, even though I know it's called October Mermaid if you translate it correctly, because it's just that's what it is. That's what I've known it to be called forever, right? Even though it's a mistranslation. So the reason that happened, I know we're talking about not this particular track anymore, but we're still talking about Xenoblade, so I think it's okay. So normally, June in Japanese would be like Rokugatsu, it's just like 6, and then Gatsu, which means like month. But in this particular track, they use an old naming convention for a month, right? So October in this old convention is Kaminatsuki or Kannatsuki, right? And somebody didn't know, or like they just like looked it up wrong and they thought it meant June and not the 10th month.
Oh wow!
So then they one person probably on VGMDB, right? They probably like mistranslated it, and that's what everybody called it, and it spread all across the world. And then somebody was like, "Hey, wait a second!" They looked back at the original Japanese. They're like, "Wait a second! That's not the 6th month. That's the 10th month." You know? So it's actually October Mermaid.
So it's sort of like. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it'll always be June Mermaid in my heart, but
yes,
that's awesome. It's sort of like how in English, October is not the 8th month, and because the calendar's changed over time.
Oh, because of the Oct. Yeah. Strange, huh?
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. I gotta go fix my track. Well, that was a fun episode. I think that was a great way of reintroducing Rhythm Encounter to everyone. So I thank you both for being here with me for that.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. All right. So I have some closing stuff to cover, and then one tradition we definitely are keeping with is that our guest, although technically you're both guests today because I don't have an official permanent co-host yet, but one of our guests each episode is going to bring on a bonus track. So we are going to completely close out the episode with something from Chris that even as of now, none of us know what it is yet. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about the next episode. So one thing you might have noticed is this is slightly shorter than past Rhythm Encounters, and that's because we wanted to actually put episodes out at a regular pace again. And when we were doing 2, 3, I think even sometimes 4-hour episodes, that took way too long to edit. It was a lot to listen to, and we couldn't keep up with the schedule. So we're gonna stick with that now, and the plan is that we're gonna release episodes every 2 weeks now. So not as much as Retro Encounter. I can't keep up with Solosi, but I'm gonna do my best, and we're gonna try to do every 2 weeks, which is why we record everything way in advance. So About 2 weeks after you hear this, we should be hearing episode 52, and episode 52 is going to be about Undertale, because it occurred to us that Undertale this year is 5 years old, so it was time to do an Undertale episode. So look forward to that. If you have, thoughts on the show, feedback, topic suggestions, whatever you want to say, you can reach us, the show, at music@rpgfan.com. And remember, the track list and places to buy and stream all of the music you heard today will be in the show notes, both in your podcast app and on rpgfan.com. So for the two of you, Chris and Hilary, how can people reach you if they want to talk to you about music or elbow pipes or anything else?
I'll go first. So RPG Fan email is good, hilary@rpgfan.com, or I'm also EPFire on Discord.
Great.
For me, Twitter is probably the best one. So it's @cportermusic. That's definitely the best.
Great.
one.
Oh, and then me, well, I don't know. I'm technically on some social media, but at this point, the easiest way to get me would also be email, which is just mike@rpgfan.com. So if this is your first introduction to either RPG Fan or our podcasts, I also want to give a quick shout out to our other shows. When you're done listening here, make sure you go check out Random Encounter. That's our general RPG podcast that comes out about every 2 weeks, and we talk about basically what people are playing. Sometimes it's new games, current games, sometimes old games. And of course, Retro Encounter, which I really don't know how to describe Retro Encounter anymore, because it's sort of retro games. It's usually retro games. They do a game journal every month where people come together and play through a particular game. And then in between those episodes is really whatever people feel like. But it's a fun time, and there's a new episode every week. And then the last thing I'm going to say here is, if you enjoyed this episode, we would definitely appreciate if you tell people about it. Say that our show is back. And if you can, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you want to. Leave us a review, because, for some reason that helps us out. Reviews and subscriptions definitely help, help our visibility and all those podcast directories. So if you would be so kind to do that, we would definitely appreciate it. And all that said, now we're going to close out our show with a surprise here from Chris. So what do you have for us?
Okay, so for the surprise track, I picked one that it's a very, very special track. I'm going to assume that most people have never heard this. Diehard Mitsuda fans, I'm sure they have. It's not from a game. It's not from an officially released soundtrack. Not even really an officially released album, but it did officially come from Mitsuda. So maybe some diehard fans can guess where I'm going with this. But so in the early 2000s, I think between about 2000 and 2004, Mitsuda had a fan club called Hopeful Weeds. And I'm not sure what all the benefits were of it. I'm sure you had access to certain things, but about once a year, he would send his subscribers or his fan club members a CD with music on it. This ranged from original music to arrangements from his soundtrack. So there's beautiful arrangements of Chrono Cross music on one of the volumes. I think the last volume had select tracks from Deep Labyrinth, which is a really kind of obscure mobile game that he did the soundtrack to. But for this particular one, it's from the Volume 2 disc, Hopeful Weeds Volume 2 from the year 2001. And There's a track on it called Primitive Heart. And it's an original composition. It's not part of any game. And it was never released outside of just this obscure fan club disc only. Of course, it found its way online as things tend to do. But if you don't know to look for it, you don't know about it, right? So it is available if you know how to look. But so this track is absolutely stunning. It puts me in such a good mood. I remember just listening to this on a repeat in the early 2000s, and I used the song to convert several of my friends to Mitsuda fans. So I hope that a lot of people have never heard this before, and hopefully it's a cool experience for them to hear something so kind of obscure from Mitsuda.
Great. Wow. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. What was the name again?
Primitive Heart from
Primitive Heart.
Hopeful Weeds Volume 2.
All right, so we're going to close out with the Primitive Heart. Thank you both for being here, and
Thank you.
please come back next time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hilary, I like elbow pipes. Oh, that's so funny that you said that.